Hey guys, Killer here. We're back again with another What Deck to Play This Weekend video. I'd like to start off with a couple things. First, if you like the channel, you like the videos, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitch and Twitter in the description below. That'll allow you to know when I go live on Twitch. Ask me any questions you want or just see my gameplay, and that would be great. Second, I want to preface a lot of these formats I do not play a lot of, although I do play some of the events on the weekends. And for those events, they're PTQs or challenges, and I'd like to do well. So instead of playing them as much during the weekdays when I'm streaming, I instead asked a lot of people who do play them a lot during both the weekdays and just during the month, and basically all the time, both for fun as well as for competition. And that is where I'm going to get some of my knowledge about these formats, and I will preface when I'm talking about each format if the knowledge is coming from me or if it is coming from outside sources that have done well in the formats and play them a lot. With that out of the way, let us jump in. First, Standard. Now, as you probably know, as you've seen either my stream or these videos or any video that I talk about, not particularly fond of Standard in the recent years. I played an event here or there. I did play the PT a couple months ago, but besides that, have not played much Standard. So, I'm going to go off of MTG Goldfish results as well as what I've been hearing from my friends who've been playing events like SCG, the Arena Opens, and other big profile Standard events. And this is what they've told me. One is that Mono Green Food is actually a deck that has been on the rise recently. It is able to combat Gruul Adventures, being able to beat them in the long game, and have formidable mid-game against them in the forms of Wicked Wolf and Lovestruck Beast, being able to not really get cheesed out as much. Because of that, it usually gets to take over the long game with cards like Feasting Troll King, the Great Henge, and just Wicked Wolfing down everything, never being able to die, just having huge body and huge amount of counters. It is able to beat it in the late game and usually be able to handle the mid game. Really the only way you're losing is through an Embercleave, and with Gruul Adventures being one of the most popular decks, I would highly suggest trying out Mono Green Food, as it has done fairly well in recent tournaments. Now, Gruul Adventures, still great. You have Cheese of the Embercleave, the late game of the Great Henge and Vivian, and you have the mid game of Edgewall and Keeper plus adventure cards. So I think this is still going to be a great decision, whether Mono Green Food or Gruul Adventures is your take on the mid-rangey creature decks. Now finally, if you're into more of a control deck, we've got Esper Doom Foretold. Play a lot of permanents that once they enter the battlefield, you don't really care if they get sacrificed. Treacherous Blessing, Omen of the Sea, Omen of the Sun, Elspeth Conquers Death after it's gone off a little bit. So these are just some permanents, and Golden Egg and Mazemind Tome and all these things. These are some permanents you can sack Doom Foretold. And eventually you're going to pop the Doom Foretold, get yourself a creature, some life, some card draw, make them discard a card. It's a great way to gain advantage, and out of Gruul Adventures, they're almost always going to have something to sack. And with you playing cards like Treacherous Blessing or Elspeth's Nightmare, you are always going to have cards to sack yourself. So it's a pretty good value engine against them. You have good sweepers in Extinction Event, good removal in Elspeth Conquers Death and Skyclave Apparition. All around good control deck, although you're still playing a sort of slow deck and you can get overrun sometimes by a quick Embercleave draw, outdrawn by cards like the Great Henge. So it's not the end-all be-all, but I do believe it has a good creature matchup. Let us move on into Pioneer. Now, I played a little bit of Pioneer over the past couple weekends. I played some Jeskai Luca. I think it was fine. I went 0-2, but that's because I'm pretty bad at the deck. There was a good chunk of Pioneer played in the mocks this weekend. It was 24 players. A lot of people ended up picking up Mono Red Burn, or Red White Burn per se. Has low to the ground creatures, a good burn suite, and can kill pretty quickly. Now this is a deck that I would play personally. I've played some leagues with it, done pretty well with it. It feels a little bit clunky at times, but most of Pioneer feels pretty clunky at times. So I would suggest this deck, especially if you're newer and you'd like to play an aggro deck to multi-queue. But there are some other decks you can also play. There's Mono Green Planeswalkers, did very well even winning the mocks. There's some Sultai mid-range decks like Sultai Reclamation, Sultai mid-range with Shark Typhoons, and some other cards like Wilderness Reclamation, Uro. And there's decks like Oops All Spells, where you just flip over your deck and kill them in a turn, and if they don't have the correct sort of interaction, you can kill as early as turn 3. So these are all like some combo decks, some mid-range, some aggro. There's a lot of different ways you can play Pioneer because no one's truly trying to break the format because there's not that many big tournaments for it. But with the small challenges being on the weekend, if you want to pick up some quick bucks, these are some decks you can play for it. Now let us move on to Modern. Recently there was some big Modern tournaments. I top 8'd a NRG event with Mono Red Prowess. I started out 5-0 in a PTQ, although a little bit burnt out into 6-3. I did get a top 32. This is the deck that I would personally play. Has the ability to kill as early as turn 3 with some nutted draws. Can go super long game with cards like that at the stage, Seasoned Pyromancer and Obosh out of the board. And has cheese elements in the form of Blood Moon. All things that I love to do. You can basically play an aggro, a mid-range, or a control role with this deck. Although I don't necessarily think this is the tier 0, the best tier 1 deck, I do think this is solidly tier 1 and the deck that I would personally be playing. But there's some other archetypes you can play. There's decks like Oops All Spell, it's been doing pretty well. Very linear. If your combo gets disrupted, you're going to feel pretty bad. But you have quick kills, consistent turn 3 kills, semi-consistent turn 2 kills, and with the absolute nutter butters, you can have turn 1 kills. You can also play a deck like Neo Brand or Ad Nauseam, although not as consistent and not as being hated out as Oops All Spells. There's other decks like White-Green, not the correct White-Green deck, but there are decks like White-Green where you gain infinite life with Heliod and Spike Feeder, another great creature combo deck. And then finally there's 4-color control, a great tier 1 deck, possibly even in the tier 0 range, where you just basically have answers to everything. You have Uro, one of the most powerful creatures in Modern. You have Cryptic Command, the best counterspell in Modern. You have Omnath, another one of the best creatures in Modern. 1-mana removal spells that just get to deal with any threat that you really want to deal with in Path to Exile. Unbeatable late game in the form of Field of Dead plus Hour of the Promise. And ways to beat quick combo in the terms of Force Negation. And good grindy cards in Wrenn and 6. So you basically get to have all avenues covered. The only thing that's weak about this deck is that you are playing a 4-color mana base, very susceptible to cards like Blood Moon and potentially Pillage effects. But you even have Wrenn and 6 to kind of save you from Lando. It's really only Blood Moon, which you have answers to in the form of Aether Gust postboard and even some in the main deck, and Force of Negation. There's some other decks you can kind of play. You can play some like Is It Control Kiki Jiki deck. You can play some Tron decks. You can play some other combo decks in Death Shadow. Although I think if I were to sit down at Modern right now, I would try to pick up 4-color Uro, Oops All Spells, or Mono Red Prowess. Now, let us move on to Legacy. Now, personally, I haven't actually been playing that much Legacy in the form of in the form of just getting a lot of matches in, but recently I've had a lot of success in Legacy. Top 8 Legacy Showcase in last week, or 2 weeks ago, and last week, 2nd place in the Legacy Challenge. I've been playing Mono Blue Karn Echoes. Now, I want to repeat, this deck I don't think is that great, but it is incredibly powerful. If you have the right draws, you can go turn 1 Chalice into wheel your hand, get a new fresh hand. You can go turn 1 Karn the Great Creator. You can go turn 1 Urza Lord High to Artificer. And the low end of your draws really end up, you can even mulligan to 2. I've had loads of mulligans to 2, where I just mulligan to LED, Echo, hope for the best. And you know, especially on the play, you can LED Echo and just reset both players' hands and essentially just blind 7s, spin the roulette wheel, and hope yours is better than theirs. I've found this deck is very good right now because Chalice is pretty good against a lot of the decks. You've got a great Snow matchup, great Elves matchup. The one thing that is the big glaring problem with this deck and why I don't think it's that great and is capped and how good it can truly be is the Delver matchup is pretty poor. And with Delver being the most popular deck, and I think possibly the best deck, it caps how well your deck can truly be. But if you kind of dodge Delver a bit, because even though it's the best deck and most played deck, in Legacy that only means up to like 10, maybe 15%, you have a good chance of dodging Delver for a lot of your matchups. And if you're dodging Delver, you've got a great swath of matchups in the field. So if you want to try and get lucky, play Mono Blue Karn Echoes. If you want to play one of the best decks in the format, play something like Temur Delver or Snoko. Both great decks, plays Force of Will, Force of Negation, makes it so a lot of garbage things that are happening to you don't happen, and you've got quick clocks in the form of Dreadhorde Arcanist and Delver Secrets closing out the games pretty quickly, and Oko, Thief of Games. So this is the deck that I think is the best deck. Mono Blue Karn Echoes is the deck that I'm going to play, and Snoko is, I think, another great defensible deck to play. Let us move into Vintage. Vintage recently, Ravager Shops has actually been picking up a large portion of the metagame, being able to clown on a lot of these Doomsday decks, along with Jeskai Xerox decks, but some other decks like Golo Shops, a little bit bigger version of the deck and a little more prison-y, has been able to make Ravager Shops not as big, and as well as been able to beat a lot of the bizarre decks that have been popping up. So right now in Vintage, there's basically 3 ways that you can play. You can play Shops in some form, Golos, or Ravager. You can play bizarre decks in some form, either Dredge, Super Bizarre, or you can play a deck like Hollowvine, or just Hollow One plus like Squee Goblin Nabob, plus other ways to recuperate cards into your hand, plus a load of free counter spells and Force Negation, Force of Will, and the Trap. So there's those, and there's Xerox/Blue combo in the form of Doomsday or Jeskai Xerox. Many people don't play Vintage. I highly suggest jumping into it. It's very fun. The challenges are pretty small, the leagues are pretty small, and I think it's a load of fun and some good value to play in these tournaments. Finally, let's go on to Pauper. Pauper, not much to say. Tron is tier 0. Play Tron if you want to win. If you're multi-queuing, don't play Tron. Play something like Burn or Affinity or Mardu, something that allows you to play a little bit quicker while also having a reasonable matchup against the field. Not much to say about Pauper. There's basically only one event each week. It's the Pauper Challenge. Just play Tron if you want to win. Nothing more to say about that. If you guys liked the video, I know I didn't go over everything as in depth as I wanted to. It's a little bit hard to go over everything in a succinct video that's trying to be less than 15 minutes. But if you liked what I said, if I had anything that was good information for you that you liked, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitch and Twitter. I'll be playing all the big events this weekend: Mana Traders, Legacy. We've got challenges, we've got PTQs. I plan on playing basically everything. If you guys like the video, follow me there, and you'll see me play some of these decks live. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.